Hi, and welcome to this video on initial configuration, or at least a walkthrough of what happens when you first start with a Palo firewall. I did see an unboxing video. This isn't going to be an unboxing video for two reasons. The first reason being this isn't Ryan's world, and the second reason being I can't imagine anything more boring than watching somebody take something out of a box. I mean, there is a third reason as well, which is probably a better reason, if the truth be told, and that's because this is a VM and thus has no box. So I couldn't do an unboxing video. Anyhow, if you like the video, please like it and subscribe if you're not already subscribed. It really does help. I seem to be gaining some kind of traction now, and what I want to do, as I've said countless times before, is I really want to get to a point where we have more of a community that can sort of request stuff and spark conversations about configuration, because security is it's a massive arena. I personally think that Palo is one of the better devices out there. I think it's certainly one of the best firewalls, and they seem to be, you know, doing amazing things with cloud stuff. We also want to do more cloud stuff as well. So so that out of the way, we'll get to the initial configuration video. So when you deploy your OVA to ESXi, as I've got it here, you'll see that by default they have DHCP enabled. So that means I've now got, as long as it's on a network that's got a DHCP server on it, of course, I'm going to get an IP address, and I can go to that IP address, but I'm going to do it from here first for the initial logins, just to show you, because it really does help you through with the GUI. So the initial login is going to be, if I can click into it, that's better, admin and admin. Okay, so now we're logged in. So starting from 10.0, they removed the onus on the user to change the default password for the admin account, and actually it became part of the process. So we're going to put in the old password, and we are going to put in my new password. Okay, then it's going to give us our warning about devices still configured with default admin credentials, which technically it is, because we've only changed that in the candidate config. We still need to commit that change for that then to be permanent, and then for everybody to have to log on using the new admin password. Okay, once that's got through, there's a couple of things we're going to look at. So if we do show system info, we can see we've got an IP address at the top. That's our DHCP IP address, and we're going to change that in a minute to be a static address. And then we have the net mask and the default gateway, and then it's come from DHCP. You'll notice if you go further down, there is no serial number for this device at the minute, and the reason there's no serial number for this device is because it's not licensed, it's not registered. You only get a serial number once you register with an authentication code. And then we have the software version, etc. Management, we do a show interface management. We can see the IP address. We can see it's got no IPv6 address. So we can see all the configurations for it. Okay, so if we want to now set this to, we could go to the 28, and I'll just do that now just to show that. Okay, so if we go to HTTPS 168.0.28. Yeah, and then we can see that we can accept the risk and we can continue. And if we go to log in there, then we'll get the same thing, because it's not been configured yet. Okay, but we don't want that, and that's not something you'd ever really do. I very much doubt, unless you're launching this in AWS, or if you are launching it in Azure or something like that, where this is going to be behind a load balancer and in these DHCP, then I guess that's when you'd use it. Okay, so if we come back to our, just so that this is, and this of course is representative when you're looking at ESXi, this is representative of being on the console. So if you're stood with a hardware device and you're on the console, then that's what this is going to present to you. So what we have to do first, we have to go into configure mode. Okay, and the first thing we have to do is we have to change the IP assignment for the management interface from DHCP to static. So it's device config and system type, and then we've got a choice. We either have DHCP client or static. So we're going to change that to static if I can spell correctly. And now we have to give it our parameters for the management interface, what IP address and what default gateway and so on we want, and the DNS servers. Okay, so having previously pinged the IP address that we're going to use, so we will set device config, and it's for the system. And then we're going to do the IP address. So obviously we're setting for the IP address, 192.168.0.159. Net mask, which is going to be 255.255.255.0. Always get those terms mixed up. So we've got the net mask, and then we have our default gateway, which in this particular instance is 192.168.0.1. Now we have to give it its DNS settings, because we need DNS servers, obviously. DNS setting. And we have two choices here. We have a DNS proxy object and we have servers. We're going to use servers, so we're going to give it a primary and secondary server. Servers, primary, and then it's going to be good old 8.8.8. And then secondary .1. Okay, and now we need to commit that, and when we commit that, we will go back and we'll find that now the management IP has moved, and we won't be able to get onto the management IP of .28 as we previously hoped. And also we'll remove that message when we log on to the firewall for the admin password. Okay, so that's now committed, as we can see. So we'll go back over to the desktop, which is here. I have to keep remembering to do that because I'm switching it on what I'm recording with, and occasionally I screw it up and I sit there talking about something that doesn't exist. So this now is, there's nothing here, as we can see. So if we bin that one and we go to that one and we go to 192.168.0.159, we should now get onto our firewall, accept the risk and continue. And then we're going to put in admin and our new password, and as long as I've spelt it correctly and all is well, we should log in. And we do. It's a good news day. Okay, so the majority of the configuration now really would be done using the GUI. I mean, some people, I guess some people would want to do it all command line, and there's value in that as well. I mean, there's scripting, so you can have a script set up to give it all the settings that you want. But ultimately, one of the biggest strengths, as with Checkpoint in its early days, one of the biggest strengths of the Palo is the GUI, for instance. You know, I mean, it is part of it. So the first warning that comes up is telemetry data collection. Now that's obviously sending the stuff back to Palo Alto, so that you get all your telemetry data, and you know, as it goes through there, all the stuff they talk about is the threat information. You can actually download a sample file of this. So we're going to go, if you go to modify settings, and it will take you to there, and then you can select telemetry, the telemetry region that you want, and then you get your device health and performance here. In order to send that telemetry, however, as it was stated, you need to get a certificate. You can only get a certificate with a serial number. So as I'm not licensing this firewall, we won't actually be able to do that. Okay, but that's the telemetry side of things. If you leave in the comments that you want a video on the telemetry, I'll put together literally a 5-minute video and it will just show you the telemetry stuff. Please feel free. Just frankly, I wasn't prepared for it now. So initial configurations then. So we can give it a host name. So this is going to be our config firewall, and we give it a domain .local. We can give it a login banner of login banner. Now we can also force the admins to acknowledge the login banner. Okay, so if you force admins to acknowledge the login banner, that means that you cannot log in, as you'll see in a minute. You'll not be able to log in without ticking this box. And there's mixed reviews on whether that's needed or not. It does provide, in court, if you were to ever go and there was to be somebody hacking in court, you could turn and say, well, no, you couldn't say that you didn't know you were supposed to be on this device because you've literally ticked a box to say that you need to be on this device. However, be aware that it can interfere very much with automation, where the automation is just logging on through SSH, because you get the same prompt on the SSH prompt. Okay, moving further down, we've got our SSL TLS profile. So by default, it's going to use its own certificate, which is why we get the warning and we say we're not secure. We have actually got a certificate. It's just issued by Palo Alto. Again, you can go and you can create this SSL TLS profile from there, the certificate from there, and then add it in, and then it would come into there. So we are going to go for the UTC. The locale is EN, so that gives you locale data, Chinese, Japanese, so on. English, the date and the time, but we're not going to worry about that too much. You can also give it latitude and longitude, so when you go to the ACC, it gives you a nice diagram of where it actually is. Automatically acquire commit lock is when you log on, you automatically acquire a commit lock, so nobody else can do commit stuff whilst you're on it. Certificate expiration check speaks for itself. It completes an expiration check on the certificates. Use hypervisor assign MAC address. If you don't tick that, that's ticked by default with VMs. If you don't tick it with a VM, then it'll assign its own MAC address, and we've already seen, I've seen in production a few times where we've had problems because of that. Hosts can't get to the firewall and so on. The GTP security and the SCTP security underneath are transport securities, and then tunnel acceleration is tunnel acceleration. Okay, so once that's filled in there, that filled in, you've got an authentication profile that you can use, banners and messages. So you can set up a message of the day. You can set up a header banner. I mean, we can change the banners to copper, for instance, and config demo. Same banner for header or footer, or you can have the footer being different. If I refresh that, I don't know if it comes straight up now. I don't think it does because you haven't pushed it to the firewall. Some things reflect as well when so when you're first doing it, some things will reflect, some things won't. I don't think. Oh, this actually does. There you go. So I'm wrong. Then within the panorama settings, we've got a panorama settings and so on. If we want to use panorama to manage this device, the secure communication settings all deals with that as well. As you can see, it's using your own certificates and certificate profiles for that communication. Okay, moving along though, we have the services tab. The services tab is this is where we set our DNS servers, sorry, when we changed it, and you can see we've got a primary DNS server there. Now we could have set NTP servers at the same time, but we didn't. And we have a proxy server there. Now the proxy server is basically if you need your firewall to be proxied as it goes out to Palo Alto for any of its services that are defined in here. Then you set the proxy server there, and then it'll call out through that way. Something to be aware of with that is that if you do need to change that at any point, that is cached, and if you just simply remove the configuration, it doesn't go back the other way. There's other steps involved. But our NTP here, so we can do time.google.com, and you can set another one. Also, of course, you've got your authentication types if you want to authenticate your NTP. And because you have a DNS server now, we'll see in the logs in a minute when we look that it will have restarted that and it'll have got a new time delta. Okay, service route configurations, very interesting. So if you ever want to know what services are going to go and be proxied, it's basically these ones here, and you can direct these through varying interfaces. You can either select all and then select the set selected service route, so you can change that to interfaces. No interfaces configured at the minute, so I don't have any options there. And then the source address, and if you don't select source address, it will select it automatically for you. You can also do IPv6.
So if you do for IPv6, speaks for itself, it's IPv6 instead of IPv4, and then you can create destinations. So if you want to push stuff out through a certain data interface, then that's the way to do it. By default, it is use management interface for all. Another caveat with this is just to remember that if you do start using a data plane interface, if you go to policies, so in the security policies, we all know there's default rules at the bottom. The default rules at the bottom are they're gonna let that communication take place, because you're gonna come from, if you've got an inside zone or you've got an outside zone and you just use that interface to go out, that's gonna be outside to outside, so it will hit this intra-zone default. Now, by best practice assessment, it is suggested that you put a drop all rule above that. If you remember, if you put a drop all rule above this, we're going to have to account for that communication. So if we do like a drop all there, we do source any, destination any, actions drop. Okay, that's then going to be that's going to stop that from working. So anything you've got going out that's relying on intrazone would stop that working. But if we create a intrazone rule, if I can spell it right, intrazone rule, and then go to our rule types here, we've got intrazone there. When we come to there, we go to any. That will give us a destination of any, and then we have allow. That will drop it underneath. We can either move it to the top, or we can move it up, move it down, or you can drag it. We're going to move it to the top because that makes more sense for us at the minute. And then there we have. So we've now got the management intrazone rule. So we're effectively removing the dependence on these default rules, but we've got that rule there. So if you were to then go out of a data interface, that would then work. Yeah, whether you'd want to do that or not is another matter. I would probably want to put a zone in there and have that tied down to a zone. Go to networks, go to zone, click on the source zone. Once it comes through, then we're going to add a zone. So we'll add our outside, make it a layer 3. Okay. Now if I was to go back to my policy, security policy, and our intra, so we get a source zone, it'll be outside. Okay, and so there we have it. So now you've got an outside zone. So you now know that your outside zone is going to be able to get out. So that stops that communication from all zones to themselves. And then we don't have an option for the destination because it's an intrazone rule, as we don't down here. Bear in mind as well that these don't log by default, so that's why we tend to have a droppable log rule. That's why it's called a log rule. So we're going to commit that now. We're going to commit that to the firewall. And once that's committed, that's pretty much you up and running. So you've now got NTP, you've got DNS, you can get to where you need to get to. A lot of the other stuff is the dynamic updates. That needs to be registered, so you need to license the firewall and go and do the dynamic updates, and that will pull from Palo Alto. But you've basically got now is you've got a firewall that will work, and it is configured. There's multiple things as well. If we can just come away from this for a second and we can go back to here. So where we have the management for the SSL TLS profile, you can create a certificate and put the certificate on there. Again, it comes directly from SSL TLS. You just log out of this firewall now, and we go to log back in. We have our login banner there. Okay, and then I accept an acknowledge statement below. That's how we're going to log in, force admins to accept login banner. So we create the administrative session, and then we'll get onto the config firewall, and all will be well. That's kind of it. We'll look at the system logs quickly, because we should see in the system logs now, we should see the NTP. There we go. So if we look in the system logs, we'll see the NTP restart synchronization performed. and it learned to new time from google.com. The host name was changed. If we go to our configuration logs, we can see all our configuration logs when they come through. It's running very, very slow. And we can see all the configuration that was done on it. Full path before change and after change. So we see there we've got the rule that was rule-based security rules, management intro, the rule that was done, the full XML path to that. So if you ever want to do the XML side of it, this is very helpful for automation and so on. And then before change is to any, as you can see, and then after the change, so that gives you an idea of what change was done. Okay, so that's the initial setting up of the firewall. Please, if you want any more side part of that, the telemetry, the SSL TLS profile, if you want specific videos on them, please comment, and I'll get them to you as soon as possible.